Brother Dr. Clarence W. Hill. I was initiated at Jackson State University, the mighty YE, spring '68. Ace, the Dirty Dozen.
Good day, Brother Hill. Few questions that we want to go through today. And first up is, when was the first time you noticed Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated?
Well, I think it was in high school. The social studies teacher was an Omega. He'd gone to Grambling, and he was my social studies teacher. He had the colors on, and then the mathematics teacher. I watched those men. They were very strong men, and it kind of caught my eye. And I saw the purple and gold, I think, for the first time with them.
Brother Hill,
Yes.
what or who sparked your interest in joining the organization?
I have a brother who was an Omega, 2 years older than me. He plays at Grambling. And I went to Jackson State in Jackson, Mississippi. He plays the Omega, and of course, being my older brother, 2 years older, it was a big influence on me going to Omega. When I got to Jackson State, you're in the heart of Omega country. And if you were anything or anybody on campus at Jackson State, you had to be an Omega. At that time, we ran everything and controlled everything in student government and all the other organizations, and provided a great deal of leadership. So when I saw that, collectively, I was influenced to make every effort I could to join the fraternity.
Brother Hill, who were the influential brothers when you were first initiated into the organization?
When I was at Jackson State University, if anybody had any influence or in a position of leadership, they were Omega men. My major faculty member was an Omega. 3/4 of the faculty department were Omega men. The president of the college was an Omega, John Peoples. If you look into the history of who that great man was, he was third president of Jackson State University. He's still living, and I see him every year at homecoming. But he was a great influence on campus. He led us through the civil rights movement. We had the department, again, was full of Omega men who saw me every day, and had high expectations of me before, during, and after I joined the chapter. What was most impressive to me about Omega was the men who wore the colors and carried the banner for the fraternity. As you watched them and what they did, how they commanded their profession, the community relationships that they built, the outreach programs that they had, and most impressively, how they ran their campus. Those undergraduates at Jackson State ran everything that was organized. We had the highest GPA, 52 brothers. We ran the president, the student government, and on and on and on and on. At the other level, we had, in my department, over in the technology area, the chairman was an Omega. The faculty members were Omegas, and they all watched watched you, nourished you, encouraged you, and pushed you to your limits to make sure that you were able to grasp the knowledge and to provide you with the opportunity to grow. So those men were initially very influential to me as I started out at the undergraduate level. Post Jackson State, I used what I learned at the fraternity, through the fraternity, and at Jackson State to carry me through life. And I always fall back on those things that were foundational to the fraternity: manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift. I was an undergraduate student during the height of the transition from the civil rights, after the passing of the civil rights movement, 1966 through 1970. And during those times, we would the sit-ins, the demonstrations, the marches, Martin Luther King on campus, Jesse Jackson on campus, Muhammad Ali on campus, participating as they did across college HBCUs. They went in to help provide some stimulus to the undergraduate students. As a result, every spring from 66 through 70, we demonstrated to the point where we were doing sit-ins, marches, taking over campus. Every year we took over the campus and boardroom and the dining hall, and we protested for equal rights. Jackson State University is in the capital city of Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi. And we were constantly in battle with the city fathers, and the political climate there was very, very testy all the time. To the extent that we demonstrated and commanded the geography around the campus to the point where the governor called out the National Guard. 3 of those 4 years, the Sherman tank and a battalion of officers of military army came down a 5-lane highway that split the campus, stopped in front of the girls' dormitory in 1969, 1970 that is, turned the turret towards the girls' dormitory, turned the battalion towards the girls' dormitory, and unloaded on that dormitory. And if you go there today, you'll see the bullet holes still in the side of the building there. Now, during that year, 3 people got killed, and I don't know how many wounded, I forget. But I was there when it happened, and I can still hear those girls screaming and hollering. As a result, we were able to make a lot of changes at Jackson State after that. I was in the only class, 1970, that in the history of the university that didn't have a commencement as a result of those demonstrations. And if you recall, if you know your history, this was happening at the same time that you know a lot about Kent State, but you never heard about Jackson State. I played as the Omega Psi Phi and went over in the spring of '68. I believe it was April when I crossed over. We started out with about 50 interested people who were lamps then. We called them lamps, and we were on that at that time. We were online for about a year. So the spring semester we showed interest and went to the interest club and all those things. And then we had to wear these little caps and do all those things to help the lamps. Then at that time they were called lamps. Those were the people who were online. Now, when we finished, those 50 brothers had dwindled down to 12. So my line name, the Dirty Dozen. I was number 6. And in the middle of the pledge period, I was moved to become the ace, number 1. I had the fortunate privilege to be to put together the step show, and because of that, it led me to become the ace. We pledged, it went over in the spring of '68, and that year we rolled into the gymnasium and won the Greek show. That was one of the highlights of my life when we won that Greek show and went on over. After that, I I was ready then the next year. That was my junior year, and my senior year, junior and senior year, I was a dean of pledges for the mighty YE, and we took over about 4 lines during that period of time. After I, again, because of the riots in May, we were the only class that did not have a commencement exercise. So we went on back and I became employed with an engineering construction firm. I worked for about 6-8 months and was drafted into the United States Army. In the United States Army for 3 years. I served in went to electronic signal school in Fort Mountain, New Jersey, and then on over to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, where I stayed and attained the rank of E5 in a year and a half. So I was very proud of that accomplishment. The military career was a great opportunity. I learned a lot about how to deal with people. Having gone through the civil rights movement, I learned quickly that you had to work with all people, regardless of race, creed, or color. And we were able to do that, and my career was a success again, as I can see it. I have used that military experience along with the fraternities experience to become what I am today. When I moved to Columbia, South Carolina in 1970, I went to the fraternity house, the old fraternity house up in Harbison, and there were a lot of Omega men there. All I learned held significant positions in the community in all of the fields that you can possibly think about. What was most impressive was that we had judges, we had lawyers, we had football officials, we had professional people who had their own businesses and accounting and then the whole gamut. But they had a pecking order that they taught you, they trained you, they tested you. There were heated debates and discussions about the issues to help the young fellows understand that there's a role to be played, but you have to earn the respect and command your position before you can before you're given that baton. So they told me. I remember one of our fallen brothers, Charles Brooks. I was very impressed that he had been a DR. And he showed me that ring, and I went crazy. I said, I gotta have one of those rings. He said, buddy, go and get your tail to work, because that's the only way you're gonna get it. Get to work. So I took that, and I started to work in the fraternity, and I held quite a few offices in the fraternity, all the way to Bostos, and that was, when I became Bostos, that was the pinnacle for me, to have been bestowed that honor by my brothers. Brother Leon Babbage was chairman of the Housing Authority for the fraternity, the Housing Committee, and he came to me, and knowing that I had background in architecture, design, and planning, he came to me and he said, we're ready to move away from Washington, D.C., or we want to look at what our possibility and options are to move away from Washington, D.C., given the fact that we cannot grow the international facility that houses the executive committee and holds meetings and those kinds of things. So we want you to go to Washington and document, that is, measure, evaluate, and assess the conditions of the current facility, give a report on that and the plans that we have the floor plans we have currently. The second phase of my charge was to work with them to develop a concept for a new facility, or a facility that had that met the criteria that we would have specified for space, for location, for access, transportation modes, highway, those kinds of things. So I wrote it up, gave it to Babbage. They reviewed it, and we started to look for a location. In the interim, I came up with a plan a floor plan of what that building ought to be and what the elevation should look like. I then built a model, of a scale model of that particular plan, put the package together, and presented it at the Grand Conclave. It was then adopted, and that committees were formed for finance, to find the financing, to find the location, and of course to continue to look at the planning and design for the facility. We found a building under the section option. We found a building that met the criteria, which is now the international headquarters for Omega Psi Phi in Atlanta, Georgia. It had access on highway, it had major airport, and other access that would qualify that site to be where we would locate our international headquarters. Once we found the building, financing was put in place. They purchased the building, raised the financing for the balance. We then went down and measured the building. We got another architect involved in Atlanta. We measured the building, documented the building, and then we renovated that building and adapted it to the use and function for the international activities for the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. That site was dedicated and approved. We had a big ceremony, and the rest is history. The fraternity continues to be a vibrant organization with great influence, as it has historically provided leadership in the community in which it resides. And on an international basis, collectively, the fraternity is a powerful and moving force that causes or affects social change across the sociology of people, as well as the dynamics that are necessary to network and to cause or affect change. That is foundationally who we are and what we've done historically. More specifically, we as a chapter, for example, a small segment of the fraternity, create a mirror image of what the international focus has to be. We have to stay in line with what those policies are. We have to implement those programs that undergird our fraternity. We stand by the reputation that we have created for ourselves, a good, solid reputation. Now, over time, you say, well, we are not what we used to be. Well, those are only surface values, if we can call them values. The change in what undergirds our fraternity is foundational to the cardinal principles that we were founded on. It will never change. If it changes, we don't have Omega Psi Phi anymore. We have something else. So every time we deviate away from what we were founded on, it becomes something else. That's when we get in trouble. So now we look at the network. We look at the networking that must transpire so that we communicate across chapters, across districts, and then the international headquarters sets the policy for us to operate. Now, over time, we have the influences on us in our society that we want to try to shift to adjust so that we can be, quote, accepted by society, as opposed to remaining steadfast on what our cardinal principles are and what we have to deliver as a fraternity. So, brothers, we must continue to stay in the lane, drive the train, and take all of us down that path to continue to grow the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. If I had a few moments to say a little bit about my wishes for our great fraternity, it would be that each of you would recognize your full potential, that each of you would contribute to uplifting humanity, that each of you would grow to your fullest academic achievement, that each of you would reach back and grab somebody and help them along the way. remain steadfast in your belief that there is a God, and that we practice our belief in our God through our action and our deeds and our programs. And I would wish and hope that this chapter we call Omicron 5 will continue to blossom, that will be an anchor in the community, and that it will provide those programs that will stimulate youth to levels of excellence, to the point where we grow a generation of entrepreneurs who look like us. We would grow the next scientists to solve the medical problems, who would invent those things, as we have black people historically have invented, that would help society be more efficient, solve problems and issues, and to accelerate our knowledge base as human beings. I would also wish that we would network with each other to the point where we collaborate and collectively solve problems. Put away our levels of tolerance. To understand that it takes all of us collectively to work together so that we can achieve whatever goals and aspirations we have for ourselves, and at this point, whatever we have for our fraternity. God bless you. God bless the Omega Psi Phi fraternity.